Welcome back. This is Newsfile, it's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile we put Ghana first. It's brought to you by the kind sponsorship of Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN everywhere you go, Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneur leaders for Africa, MTN everywhere you go. Robert and Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 33 plus years. My Way Insurance, dial *165# on MTN to join My Way today. Syntax Tanks is strong, it's tough. Activa International Insurance, our clients are passion. International Facilities Management Association, they are proud to be associated with Newsfile. Safari Valley Eco Park, bringing you closer to nature. Gold Board Jewelry, pure, precious, proudly Ghanaian. Gold Board, the entity that has come under controversy in the last couple of weeks, that has contributed through the Gold for Reserve program, right? With the Bank of Ghana contributed a total, as we were told by December, of $10 billion to stabilize the currency of this nation and put our economy in a shape that many are celebrating. Koa natural juice, 100% cocoa fruit juice. Now let's welcome my next set of guests for the next not 3 hours, maybe 2.5 hours. The first 45 minutes we spent with Dr. Osei Educhum, who wants to be the flag bearer of the NPP. And he spoke about his dreams, his ideals, and his prospects that he can see going into the elections. He says he's the most preferred. Ghanaians want him, so the party should elect him to give them the opportunity of coming back to government. My guest for this next session of the discussion, Alfred Tuah-Yeboah, is former Deputy Attorney General and Minister for Justice. Victoria Bright is international corporate lawyer and entrepreneur. Susan Adua-Mankwai is Executive Secretary, the National Interest Movement, NIM. Bobby Banson is lawyer and lecturer, Ghana School of Law, Makala. Of course, Sharif Mahmoud Khalid is Associate Professor of Accounting and Finance and Economic Advisor to the Vice President. They are here in the studio, 3 of them, and 2 other guests joining us via Zoom. Gentlemen and ladies, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, so how do we start? Let's first take a listen to Victor Smith. Victor Smith is Ghana's ambassador to the U.S., and he has brought some news telling us about Sedina Tamaklo Atienu, the former Maslok boss, who in 2017 had to get to court to answer for her stewardship for some corruption. It's almost like we forget the same kind of milieu we have seen in 2025. It's almost the same thing that we saw in 2017, 2018, 2019. She got bail and then got bail for medical treatment in America or wherever and didn't come back to continue with the trial. The case was ongoing together with herself and her deputy, the operations guy at the place. He got 5 years in jail and she got 10 years in jail, but she's not served a single day in jail yet. We're told that she has been arrested and Kenneth Foriata has also been arrested and in detention. Both of them are facing courts in America on the 20th and on the 21st of January. We're asking one simple question. These fugitives from justice, now arrested and in detention in America, are there hopes that they are homebound to come face, one, to face trial, and the other straight to Insawam perhaps? Let's listen to these voices and return.
arrest, but a few hours ago, I was also informed the FBI were involved. And of course, that sort of corroborated with what the Attorney General told me, that the FBI had informed him that they had picked him up.
Okay.
I suspect it's a combination of these two factors. ICE normally will pick you for immigration issues.
Okay.
But then, of course, when the FBI comes in, then there must be some criminality or Interpol police request. So the red alert comes in there. So the combination of the two of them, convinces me that Ghana government had requested for this man to be brought in to help us, if you like, unravel some issues that have been brought against him as a former minister. The extent of my involvement at this stage was when he had been picked up, I discussed it with the consular officers of my embassy, and we decided to make a request to make sure that he was being treated properly as per protocols, international protocols. And so we requested, and they agreed in principle to allow us to come and visit. But just before we set out, the ICE people came again and said the detainee had refused to meet with us without his lawyers. That was the initial response from the detention center. And they were going to go back to him and probably request that his lawyers appear so we can come and verify for ourselves that he's being treated fairly and not being denied, for instance, his medication and all that. But we waited for a while. After about a few hours, they came back to us to say the detainee, being the ex-minister, had refused now to see us under any circumstance.
I have gotten it from official sources where this lady is being kept and that she's going to go to court on the 21st. Let me say that U.S. Marshals are authorized by the Department of Justice in the U.S. system to effect arrest. The Marshals were authorized by the Department of Justice. Now, that one has nothing to do with, if you like, immigration as, ICE would do. ICE moving as the immigration, unit. Okay, so the U.S. Marshals different from the ICE people. Both are security agencies.
And is she being held strictly for extradition purposes, or are there other legal issues affecting her detention?
That is extradition purposes. There was mention of an extradition request as far back as July of 2024. That is the information I have. So that is the legal request that was acted upon by the U.S. Marshals.
So that's Ambassador Victor Smith speaking to Joy News earlier in the week. And so now, as we know, the two individuals are both in detention and are facing court. But are there any hopes that they are homebound? Let me go to Alfred Choyebua here. Thank you very much, Alfred Choyebua, for making time to join us. All right, so Alfred is not ready yet. Let's get in. Bobby, thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Thompson, and Happy New Year to you. And Happy New Year to colleague panelists.
Thank you very much. So as a Ghanaian, not just as a lawyer, but as a Ghanaian, are you getting excited that the country is looking for people to account for their stewardship, and they are in some sort of trouble in the U.S., whether or not they are going to be deported to this country to face justice is another thing to discuss?
I don't think excited. I would say that I'm excited. The most important thing for me is that we are seeing the rule of law being applied the legal processes and procedure being applied as far as the Attorney General is concerned or the authorities are concerned, how they appreciate it, with collaboration of U.S. state agencies, as it were, to give an opportunity for those that have been cited or alleged to have committed an offense or a crime in Ghana, particularly when they held public office, to come back and account or respond to those allegations. I think that this would be something that it's not the first time. If you read our political history in the past, not maybe more recent past, but in previous times, there are persons that have also gone away and they've been brought to face charges in that respect. And so this is probably gaining a lot of media attention because of the personality involved and the circumstances under which he left the jurisdiction and his disposition, particularly when the U.S. the ambassador to the U.S. And this is what I know that they do. They have a consular service that offers these services for all Ghanaians. It is not as if it was only Mr. Ofori-Atta. I know that every Ghanaian that is picked up by ICE under those circumstances, the Ghana embassy contacts them through their consular desk to ask if they need any legal services, they need any help, they need every person, any assistance. And if the Ghanaian has rejected that kind of help, I think that is very important in the scheme of things. It shows that there may be mistrust for that person holding for the official government.
Yes, for Ken Ofori-Atta, what they told us was a conditional rejection. He says he will not speak to anyone without his lawyers. For Sedina, we're told that they understand that they do not allow visits to the place, but things could be arranged virtually, and they are arranging to get to speak to her to find out if she has any needs of support.
But Mr. Smith said that first there was the conditional rejection, and then later, if I heard him right, he was told that Mr. Ofori-Atta has decided not to speak to them under any circumstances. Okay. So I think that, yes, he said that subsequently. And so that for me showed the level of mistrust as it looks that he may have for the official government agency or representative in the United States. And perhaps we would see how that pans in the general scheme of things. But I would think that even though if he's accused of having committed any offense, he has no obligation, responsibility to assist in any way, give any statement. He can be tried in absentia and what have you. I'm hoping that the Attorney General's department may, if they go beyond the personality and actually go to the root of the matter, because there are a lot of issues that have been raised. We must bring it to conclusion by the state agencies. Okay. They would also be able to recover. This is
supposed to be just your preliminary comments. We'll return to you for substantive comments. Okay. But you can say in 30 seconds that for Sedina Tamakula Atieno, if she's brought to the country, she's walking straight to Insawam and nowhere else, correct?
Yes, because the matter is fait accompli. She's already sentenced and she would come and face charges. I mean, the only circumstances is if the president decides to exercise prerogative and then pardon her. Yeah.
We'll come back to that, whether that should be in anybody's contemplation at all. Susan, good news for our country. People say embarrassment for Ghana because these are people who have held offices and shouldn't put themselves through this.
Oh, I agree that they shouldn't put themselves through this. But whether as a country we are embarrassed, I don't believe we are embarrassed.
They served us at the highest levels.
So they should be allowed to do as they please.
The international media is talking about it. Then they are talking about Ghana, fugitives from justice.
How will we put it? We don't care. This is about us. It's about time that we put us first before we put anybody else. And this is about us. I think that we shouldn't worry whether it's an embarrassment that people have been, as for Sedina, she has been judged to have committed a crime. And asking her to come back and serve her sentence is good for us as a people, for people to see that crime doesn't pay. You understand? It is good for the government to show that even our own, if you fall foul of the law, you will be punished. It is good for the legacy of His Excellency John Dramani to show that in his time, there was zero tolerance, irrespective of whether you're a family member or not. And the fact that you punish a family member for wrongdoing doesn't mean that you hate them. It's a deterrent for other people to see. If we don't start punishing the political elite, then we should forget about the people down there, because they look up to the political elite to show the way, to show direction. And if the political elite are going to get away with all sorts of things, then the people down there are going to say, but really, what gives? I mean, we will do as we please. And a lot of the indiscipline and corruption you see in our society is because the political elite seem to be getting away with corruption. So we don't care whether it's an embarrassment. I don't know who is embarrassed, because basically I think that if you called 10 Ghanaians off the street and asked them that, is it okay that somebody who has been deemed to be corrupt has taken the money of poor women, of people who are struggling to put food on their table, has taken the money and wantonly used it for whatever, is being punished? Are you embarrassed that the person is coming home and it is in the news? I'm sure they'll say no. You understand? We don't care what other people say. So for me, it's not an embarrassment at all. I think that we need to do this. We need to show that we are not going to tolerate corruption, and it is not business as usual. So I'm not. With Ken Ofori-Atta, maybe it's an embarrassment to himself. Because if he actually feels that he's innocent of all the things that he's being charged with, I think it's 70-something, another 78 counts or so.
And in Sedina's case too, there were 78 charges.
78 seems to be the magic word, magic number.
Actually, I'd forgotten about that number. I thought in her case, the charges were actually more. But it does appear that both 78
seem to be fixated with the 78. But I think that, if he cares a lot about his reputation, he will come and let the truth, or whatever the truth may be, come up. You understand?
Well, it looks like, voluntary return may not be an option anymore. It may be too late.
Yeah. So why is it an embarrassment to us? I mean, why should we be embarrassed for somebody to come and answer for his tenure of office? You understand? I'm very sure that there are even MPP people who want him to come back.
Some have made comments so far, and they are saying that the party should be calling him to come.
Yeah, so it helps. It helps their own reputation to say that, okay, we even asked for him to come back, and if they actually believe that he's innocent of all the charges against him, he should come and prove.
But that call may be too late in the day, because it may only be relevant if he's facing ICE only for the immigration process, and he succeeds in the immigration process and he stays back. But if this terminates in his deportation, it is not your call that makes any difference, because he's coming anyway.
So we would hope that the ICE that we see now is not the ICE that used to be of yesterday. This is a totally different ICE. You get it. And if they think that, well, go to your country and go and answer to charges. I mean, this is a country now that goes into another country, pulls the president out and says, we are bringing you to our country to charge you and try you for all sorts of drugs, etc., all sorts of crimes. You understand? If they, in the same turn, decide that there's a country who has determined that somebody should come and answer for their crimes, they are going to keep that person. They will be speaking on both sides of their mouth. You understand? It won't go with the current era of what is going on in America. You understand? So I am hoping that ICE will be the ICE that we see now and say, go and answer to your charges.
Right.
Okay.
So this will be your preliminary comments. Prof.
Yeah, it's very interesting, Samson. I mean,
hold on, I hear we have a little issue with your microphone, so let's go to Vicky Bright.
Okay. Where do I even begin? Well, we know that from what we've been told by the Foreign Affairs Minister, the U.S. has assured Ghana of non-interference with the deportation, but without prejudice to the ongoing judicial processes. So we know that. So whatever happens, the U.S. is going to allow deportation if the judicial processes lead to deportation.
Right.
It's a bit sad that a former minister of this country has allowed himself to be branded as an illegal alien. I think that's unfortunate because we expect better of the people who we nominate into the highest offices of this nation. So going back to the first question that you put to Susan, I think it's embarrassing. I think it's embarrassing because, quite apart from the personal embarrassment, I think it's not a good place for us to be in terms of having someone who has held one of the highest offices in this country to be in the situation that he finds himself in. And as we've been told again from the embassy, it's being treated as a special case, precisely because of the position that he occupied formerly. So whether we like it or not, there's a Ghana angle there, and it's just not a good look. So for me, I feel it's the right direction of travel for the government to be going after people who are deemed to have done certain things which they need to come back to explain to the people of Ghana because they were custodians of, in Ken's case, custodian of, our public purse. And I think for all public office holders, you must now know, even if it's trite, even if it's something that you knew before, that from the minute you sit in that office, you are accountable to the people of Ghana for whatever it is that you are superintending over, because it's not yours, it's ours, And so you should be prepared to account for it, whether during your tenure or after your tenure, without being seen to be running away from that responsibility. Accountability to the people of Ghana in public office is non-negotiable. And if you are not prepared to be accountable, then don't hold the office, because nobody forces anybody to hold public office. The president will offer it to you, and then you are free to say, thank you, Excellency, or no, I think this is too much for me. I'm not prepared to allow this kind of public scrutiny and intrusion into, encroachment into my personal life. So please, thank you.
You almost always will lose your privacy.
You will lose your privacy. And so you cannot eat your cake and have it. You cannot hold public office and say, but this one, dear, no, it's not acceptable. So if you can't do it, don't take the position, period. Right. So for me, it is sad. It is the other side of the embarrassment is the FBI's involvement. I mean, we thought it was just a simple immigration matter. The FBI, I mean, they deal with federal offenses. And given the way the U.S. is structured, there are states, the state is actually almost self-contained, if you like. And so there are state offenses and there are federal offenses. So if the FBI is involved, it makes one very worried that, why should the FBI be, because ICE, they have the power to arrest, they have the power to detain, they have the power to go to court to do their own representation, and they have the power to deport once they get that final deportation order from a court over there. So why the FBI? So that is a big question mark. And I guess it's unfolding, and these are preliminary comments, so I'll park my comments here.
But why should that come to you as a surprise that FBI may be involved? For a person that the Attorney General has told us that has been under investigation by the Office of the Attorney General, and the Attorney General has had, interactions with U.S., Department of Justice officials. There are offshore dealings that are also under his microscope. And then before the Attorney General came into office, we had the OSP, which was also doing its investigations, which this minister was involved, not only this minister, with his aide, who is also, Ghanaian and U.S. citizen, who we are also looking to return. And they have filed an extradition process for them to be brought back to the country. In fact, a red alert or notice was issued, which I think is the one that prevented Ken Ofori-Atta from traveling around the place, even though he had valid visas for other countries, including the UK. Right. So why are you surprised?
Because, the offshore element is something that came as a surprise to us. Not entirely, because obviously, if you are, and I'm not saying Ken is guilty because I'm not a court of competent jurisdiction, I'm not a juror on any matter, but if you have the kind of financial nous that he has, and you are minded to hide money, then of course you will do it offshore. So from that point of view, it's not entirely surprising that they were looking offshore as well, if they believed that he may or may not have committed certain offenses.
Okay.
But to hear that this is actually something that's being investigated, that international investigators are involved, and I mean, that takes it to a whole different level. Right. And that is where the surprise comes in.
Doc, let's not forget that last week, Dominic Ayine told us that he had spoken to a former U.S. Attorney General who spoke as representing Ken Ofori-Atta together with two other lawyers, including the one who has spoken publicly that we all know. And they were seeking and asking for assurances that he will be giving the treatment, that should be accorded him if he, cooperated, and they were assured.
Samson, just to take it from where you're landing so I don't lose my train of thoughts, is that is a concession that they've run out of strategy to now come in. Because, I don't blame lawyers at all when it comes to issues like this and when it comes to representation of high-profile cases, especially in matters of extradition or outside the jurisdiction. They will hold on to any form of strategy for their client not to come in. And at the point where the ex-US Attorney General start to say, okay, well, can you give us assurances that his human rights would be intact, his XYZ would be okay, they're throwing in the towel. But once that will happen, either than that, they would have still gone on a long haul of strategy to protect this case as much as they could. Right. That said, it is a very interesting thing. I'll say it's a mixed feeling.
That's small bit. Yeah. Just a little legal joke.
Okay.
We say that when the law is on your side, you bank on the law.
Yes.
When the facts are on your side, you bank on the facts.
Yes.
When both are not, bank on the table.
Yes. And that's what is happening. But now they can't keep banging on the table, so they have to go into diplomacy. So what's happening in this case that makes it very interesting? For me, it's one of mixed feeling. But I don't see embarrassment as one of the key elements of the mixed feeling that we have as far as this case is concerned. For me, it is one, I don't know what to say if I come across either Mrs. Sremsai or Ayine, because it's a masterclass of strategy they've displayed. Masterclass in every sense of it. Because you'd see, the base of the hawks and the base of the political, doing something right, but they had their eyes on the ball, which they never dropped at any point. No one saw this coming. Absolutely. And if you look at extradition cases, the Guptas of South Africa are still in Dubai. right? Driving to Abu Dhabi to swear affidavits at the South African consulate and going back to Dubai to chill out for a long case, including the Zuma regime, because they believe they were part of it. This is even creating a diplomatic row between Pretoria and Abu Dhabi because they are unable to extradite them. It tells you how complex extradition cases can be. So the two, the Attorney General and the Deputy, realizing the complexity, had other ways of doing it. That's why I call it a masterclass. There should be a case study on how they get this after all of this is done. So now, what happened is, if you realize that as the case went on, right, let's also not forget that bar Professor, the late long-serving finance minister, Kwesi Boche, Ken Ofori-Atta is probably the longest-serving finance minister.
That's right.
And that's very important, and important for the context of this discussion. He's held our purse in both prudential, fiduciary, and other responsibilities for such a very long time, right? So if this is happening, it means that it's a very, very high-profile case. That said, he's exhibited an act of bad faith. Why do I say this? You took permission from the Chief of Staff early January when your party had lost power. And if whatever information is out there is accurate, between the 2nd and 4th, so it means the new government had not come in. So if a Chief of Staff is granting you powers under the state, permission to go for health or medical care, it is only right that you show good faith, right, in the permission that has been granted you. You say, okay, well, if the FBI, I mean, the US sometimes, they advertise human rights, etc. If they deem you fit to put you in detention, it means you are fit to be on the next flight to Ghana, right? So you had expired that stay, and that is something we are still not contextualizing within this. So if he left Ghana and then he's back, he's been asked to come, if I were him, voluntarily, just come. Or say, look, I'm taking a break to come to see this. But what happened is, Manasseh, I think, put up a Facebook post earlier. Most people did not pay attention to it. Detailing the visas, his immigration status in terms of visas he has in his possession and their expiration periods. He flew a kite, very interesting kite. So what would have happened is, and you'd see here his lawyers has been very deliberate in actually making every move they made. You say you're in the US for medical care, right? Your visa expires very soon, but you have a Canadian or possibly a UK visa, right? In their mind, this is me thinking. They could have said hypothetically that, oh, if he tried to move to the UK, even though he has a 9-year visa, right, he's only mandated by the immigration rules to be domiciled or to be there for a period of 6 months and would have to exit to go back in. So if his movement become a bit erratic, it shows that you are evading justice and not medical care.
But which, as we know the facts, he actually did. After the first 6 months or so in the US,
yes,
he went to the UK.
Yes.
Because you had to go.
You had to go out and
then come back in.
So
and then he came back in.
He came back in.
Yeah.
But the Interpol red notice had then been issued, which meant he couldn't move again. So if he moved, there was a fear that he'd be arrested anywhere he was going.
Chances are that triggered the red alert to be issued. Because if it didn't trigger it, it means that he would have that freedom of hopping around countries, right, just to meet immigration regulations and not to be in Ghana. You are fit to travel to the UK, but not fit to come to Ghana. Right. So we are not politicizing this at all, but this is where I think that commendation should be given where it ought to be given. Because if the Attorney General and the Deputy did not work, right, because look, how they Chinese walled this to such an extent that nobody knew what was happening is very interesting.
But again, then,
right. So
if the Interpol red notice had also not been issued, then there would have been room and allowance to go to London and return, or go to the next other Canadian passport he has. He would have gone back.
Until last week, was the public aware that his visa was revoked?
No.
Has his lawyers challenged that his visa was not revoked? No. So you see how interesting it is and how it's playing out. But you see, another interesting feature in this extradition case that is worthy of commendation, not just on the part of the Office of the Attorney General and Minister of Justice, but also on the government, the President and Vice President, the Mahama Opoku-Agyeman administration, is that fairness, right? Non-political interference. You see institutions working. Sedna Tamaklo was not tried under an NDC government.
Correct.
She was tried under an NPP government. It is taking her own party's Attorney General to call for her extradition.
The extradition, as I know it, and Chairboy will join us, he was the one who had a brief on it.
Yes.
It had already been done, but it had to be followed up.
Well,
and I think that's what.
Well, but even following up on it
is
is good faith in terms of continuity of government. Because, I mean, people have accused the Attorney General of discontinuing some cases. So if he had actually wanted, he would say, okay, then if it is anything to go by, as I don't have the facts in studio, then you have said, okay, well, I'll discontinue this as well. But he went on. And I've had a success just in under 1 year of the government. You know, excluding the vetting periods and all of that, he's worked assiduously.
He said he could have said he would discontinue.
No,
this.
like
because this one you can't discontinue.
No, when you say discontinue,
the trial has completed. No, he's been convicted and sentenced.
No. I'm talking about the extradition process.
Okay.
That
continue
the former
with that
Attorney
process.
General said had triggered. So he could have decided to be, indifferent about it, but he pursued it as much as he's pursuing overreacted. So there's no case of political witch hunt. If you weigh the two. Right, Sedna's own party, right?
There has been a lot of pressure. Yeah. Once Oforiatta was being sought for or after, then the NPP consistently said, "Why are you looking to extradite Oforiatta when there is somebody that you are supposed to extradite that you haven't done?"
You know our politics. Regardless, that's where commendation ought to be given. It has to.
Right. Okay. So you hold it there for me. Let me go to Alfred Cheyebua. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning, Samson.
Great. You and I have had discussions about Sedina Tameklo in the past, and the fact that you had triggered the process, and yet, very little was being done to consummate it. I suppose today you're excited about this, right?
Samson, definitely I'm excited because the work that we commenced while in office has actually come to fruition. After her conviction, we went back to the court for a warrant for her arrest. Subsequent to that, we began the extradition process, and in July 2024, everything was forwarded to the relevant authorities for the process to commence in the U.S. So upon exiting office in January 2025, it was my expectation that the process is fully through, and thankfully now we are told that Sedina has been arrested by the U.S. authorities awaiting her extradition.
Questions have also been asked, why did it take you so long after her conviction to begin the extradition process?
Something. She was convicted in 2024. I don't know the exact date. Right after her conviction, we began the process. And those who have worked the age, they know that which you can have such a matter expedited in another county. And so we activated the office through the DPP's office. At the end of the day, everything was done. I remember I had an interview somewhere in August 2024, where I made the public know that we had been able to locate where Sedna was living, and she was being monitored by the U.S. authorities, and that very soon she will be arrested, and then this of extradition definitely begin. But now we are told that she has been arrested, detained. It is my expectation that the extradition process will go through the U.S. and then to be brought back to Ghana to serve a sentence.
Can you also confirm to us that once she's brought to Ghana, she gets to the airport, what happens? She goes home?
The moment she gets to the airport, there is a warrant for her commitment to prison. She ought to be arrested by the security agencies and right away into prison custody. No two ways about that.
We have people who have had warrants on their heads come through the airport, walk through their homes, go to do processes in different courts, and walk out of this country. So please, how can you be so sure that she will come to the airport, get arrested, and through to the Insawam?
Unless there is state complicity, if the state decides that it's not going to activate agents to monitor and arrest her at the airport, then that's where we will be. But if the state decides to activate whatever it's supposed to do, then the moment she lands in Accra, she ought to be picked up and be sent to prison custody. But the space is being monitored. I mean, the moment that is completed in the U.S., Ghanaians will also be watching to see what happens when he gets to Ghana.
She was convicted, and it's been over a year since her conviction and sentence. The sentence begins from the very day of the conviction. So when she comes, if she does, and she's taken to Insawam, is she going to start fresh? Is that how does it work?
Yeah, I mean, something I know that's quite contentious. I've listened to arguments from lawyers that if you look at Section 294, if I'm not mistaken, conviction or sentence starts from the day that it's pronounced. But that matters so far as she was convicted and sentenced on a certain date, her sentence will start from that date. But in looking at statute and other provisions in an act, you have to look at the intention behind such provision. If you read that provision so carefully, you realize that it assumes that the moment that person is convicted, the person is under the custody of the court and will begin his or her sentence. And so it will also involve the judiciary at a point in time. If President argues that her conviction, after her conviction, she spent some years outside prison, other count, the state also say no. Let's go and then cut it based on this section in the criminal act. Speaking for myself, the intention behind that section is that at the time that that person is sentenced, that person should be under the custody or in the custody of the court. For that matter, we don't have the latitude of going back home. But if you are home, for example, if she spends 9 years in the U.S. and is extradited to Ghana, are we going to say that she'll come and spend about 6 months and they'll be set free? That will be absurd. That's the reason why I think it will require some judicial intervention at a point in time to know the true meaning of that section in Act 30.
The chief operating officer of the Maslog that she worked with, who was also tried and convicted to 5 years, do you know if he's in fact in prison? Because I'm hearing that just a while ago that he must have gotten some bail and is challenging the appeal. What do you know? Challenging the conviction.
When he was convicted, he filed an appeal.
Right.
And so before we left office, we're looking at how those processes will be done in court and for his appeal to be heard. I only read within the week that the Supreme Court has granted him bail pending appeal. I just read it. And so the presumption is that since he's granted bail, he should be home now. But that doesn't mean that the conviction of that gentleman has been set aside. But just that the Supreme Court has granted him bail from what I read from the newspapers.
Yeah, so all this hue and cry about bring her home, and she comes home, she's also entitled. She could go seek appeal, file an appeal. Time may have run out, but she may go for extension of time to file the appeal, file an appeal, and then seek for bail and could really be at home and not hiding like she was in the U.S.
I mean, it's so surprising if she's granted bail by any court in Ghana. I'm not a court. I'm not about conviction about it. Bail. Because as you know, if you were granted bail in a case and you jump that bail, by law, you are not entitled to any bail again.
Right.
She was granted bail by the court. She stopped permission of the court to come to the U.S. for medical reasons. She has jumped bail. In fact, her surety, I think, Mr. Alex Mood, had to go through because we're trying to also restrict the bond against him.
That's right.
And so now that he's now arrested in the U.S., if she comes to Ghana, by law, she's not entitled to bail. As for her right to appeal, that is her right. If the court looks through and realizes that maybe her conviction was wrong or something, definitely she will be acquitted on the start. But we are keenly watching the space because there are people who also have some kind of conspiracy and the rest, but I don't want to believe in conspiracy.
Right.
They are keenly watching the space, what will happen.
Right. So let me find out from Bobby about this, the two of you, the lawyers, if you have any different views on that. Bobby, what Afrechia Yeboah is saying, do you agree with him that such a person will not be entitled to bail any further, having once breached the bail bond? And I remember that she put people like Alex Mould in a very difficult position. I remember Beatrice Ananfio, who was then acting as lawyer for Alex Mode, seeking to get Alex out of that complex web.
Well, Samson, the grant of bail or otherwise is at the discretion of a court. And one of the conditions for the grant of bail is for you to show if you are likely to breach the bail bond. And if there's evidence that you have breached the bail bond once, I think that one would think that in exercise of the law as we know it and as we have practiced it, judges will find it very difficult to give you another bite at the cherry, except that, of course, maybe the conditions will be stiffer than the first one, and you're able to convince the court why you breached the bail bond once and the circumstances under which you want to commit to the fact that you will not be able to breach it. So I agree with Senior Alfred Tuayeboah with his analysis and conclusion, except to add that it's at the discretion of the court. And you know that the exercise of discretion is not cast in stone. And so looking at the facts and the evidence that may be brought before the judge may decide to grant bail or otherwise, even though I agree that it's more unlikely than not. And I also want to say that I agree with his analysis, the legal argument about if you are convicted and you do not spend time serving that conviction, whether or not the period will still count from the day you are convicted. I think that I'll draw an analogy from the provisions in the Constitution that says that if you are convicted and sentenced, the time that you have spent in lawful custody should be considered by the court in the award of the sentencing period. I think that when we read that constitutional provision together with the provisions of Act 30 and Act 29 that relates to when sentencing counts, I would want to agree with the former Attorney General that I think that you cannot say that if you are sentenced and then you are able to run away from serving time, whatever time that you are caught and brought back should be considered so that the remainder of that time should count for the period that you should serve your sentence. I think that would lead to absurdity and the mischief will not be cured.
So like you say, somewhat you agree with Alfred Tuayeboah that if she came and began to activate appeal processes and sought bail, it's most unlikely that she'll be granted bail by any court.
Yes, I think looking at the
you would be surprised if she was granted bail by any court, wouldn't you?
I will be surprised if he is granted bail by any court. Like I said, unless
that kind of bail would have been influenced by political rather than legal, reasons, correct?
If you say that kind of bail, if she's granted bail.
If she got bail.
I would not want to think that there will be political. Something, my position when it comes to.
No, I want you to call a spade what it is.
No, but that's your question is premised on the extrapolating. That
do you think anywhere in the world, someone who has run away from justice and has to be extradited has the chance of ever getting bail?
I would say 1 out of a million. And like I said, the grant of bail is discretionary remedy. If she comes to Ghana and there's evidence that she has, and I'm just thinking aloud, a peculiar medical condition that keeping her in cells for that period may not be beneficial to her health, and she's able to provide that evidence, and the court is able to agree with the Attorney General on an alternative accommodation under those circumstances.
There are people in prison. There are people in prison who are sick. I've been to the prisons and I've seen people who are in the bed on their beds, and they are looking for oxygen for them. They don't say because they are sick they should get out of the place.
No, the conviction. I think that if we, and again, I'm not saying that she deserves bail. I'm saying that looking at the circumstances, it's more likely that she'll be granted bail.
Okay.
But we must not forget that the exercise of discretion to grant bail is on case-by-case studies.
Yeah, and but in this case, as you have said, it will not be entertained at all.
The court will listen to, if they make an application for bail, the court will listen to it, but the court may decide not to grant it.
All right.
Looking at the history of the person, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And once the extradition processes were triggered by as and the letter was dispatched, Ghana had no control over it. It was left to the American authorities to execute it. So, it is not the case that the present government did anything at all. It took long because extradition is a long and complex process. The process is that the extradition request, after being dispatched by Ghana, first goes to the State Department because apart from being legal, it is also diplomatic. The US receives it and the State Department. And then after doing the relevant work on it, the State Department sends it to the Justice Department. The Justice Department, after doing whatever it does, will then assign it to the particular US District Attorney in whose jurisdiction the person sought to be extradited resides for execution. This will involve a lot of steps, including going to court for an order. The application will have to be served on the accused, who has a right to justify why he should not be extradited. That is why it might have taken that long in America. But the point must be made that this administration never really did anything to, quote, speed up, end quote, the process. Ambassador Victor Smith's letter shows that the American authorities acted on my request sent in July 2024. In any case, from July 2024, the processes for extradition commenced. The MPP stayed in office for 5 or 6 months after the request was transmitted and received. NDC has been in office for a whole 12 months period thereafter. So this is a message I've read, and you clearly know where it is coming from. It says that Ambassador Victor Smith's letter shows that the American authorities acted on my request sent in July 2024. That's the extradition request. So this is accurate, that this government didn't do anything to speed up Sedina Tamaklo's extradition, right?
Something. The government must tell us what it has done so far to get Tamaklo arrested in the U.S. So far as we are concerned, we did what we were supposed to do. What was left for the U.S. authorities to act on our request. They've acted on it. But if this current government says that they've done A, B, C, they should tell us. I mean, that's as simple as that.
But you can say and double confirm, as your boss has just done, that the government of Ghana under John Mahama did zilch, nothing at all, to complement what you did, sending the extradition in July of 2024, correct?
Something. Last week, you hosted the learned Attorney General.
Right.
If you read the letter of Ambassador Smith, Madam Tamaklo was arrested on the 6th of January, right?
Yes.
If that's the case, then why is it that when the AG appeared before your show, that issue also never came up?
Actually, when the AG appeared, I had a series of questions and I had themed them under extradition. Under extradition, I had a question for him for Ken Ofori-Atta and I had a question for him for Sedina Tamaklo. But by the time we're done with the Ofori-Atta issue, which surprises came up, we had run out of time. We had done almost 20 more minutes beyond the time I was supposed to host him. So I didn't get to ask him the Sedina extradition question. So he didn't say anything about that.
Fair enough. So he was arrested on the 6th of January. Why should it take the ambassador in the U.S. to issue that statement? If the AG had this information, because it was based on the request of the government of Ghana, had this information, I was expecting that it would have come up first. You see, based on the request that was put in by the government of Ghana,
Alfred, I suspect you are preempting my cross-examination of you, because I have spoken to you on this matter a number of times, and you have blamed the current government for doing next to nothing to ensure that Sedina Tamaklo was actually extradited. The NPP as a group have consistently blamed the Mahama administration for doing nothing. If you knew like your boss has just said, that the government of Ghana was not required to take any further step. But what you sent to the extradition you sent in July 2024 is all that was to be acted upon. Why do you now say this today? Why did you blame them? Why did you get your people to believe that Sedina was not being extradited, meanwhile Furiata was being chased?
When you file a request, definitely through diplomatic channels and other communications, you may do some follow-up. But the question that I'm asking now, that if indeed they made those follow-ups or anything, why should it take the ambassador, the Ghana's ambassador in the US, to issue a statement almost 10 days plus or less after the arrest of Sedina? They were not aware that she had been arrested. If actually they were following up, they should have known, just like how they go to know Furata's arrest and the rest. So that's my belief. And
to be frank, following the interview with Victor Smith on Joy News, I think Joy News desk, he actually has said that someone gave him the information. Then he had now to take his time to double check, to verify. So you are right. He would not have known.
Thank you. So we're not following up. As simple as that.
The AG's department, as deputy, you had your boss. They've all, phoned into the program to say, okay, this is what we did. But in any case, who writes a letter or who initiates such a process and gets a response after 1 year? Right. So if we're talking about a fresh case of extradition here, right, as to whether pertaining to what time the ambassador had the information, it's neither here nor there. The ambassador is not an acting authority on this matter. What he's only doing is that he's trying to act as a stopgap in terms of information flow between the government, right, and the public. And that is what Ambassador Smith did.
When you were speaking, you were repeating praise ought to be given where it is due.
Where it is due.
And that's why they are seeking to point out to
so
you.
if you want to point out, just say, look, we have this correspondence. You didn't
have to do any other thing.
So my point is that, tell us that, look, July of 2024, we had ex-correspondent with this. It is based on that this correspondence that this had happened. But none of this had been, he has not, whatever question you throw at, he comes back to you to say, why didn't you do X, Y, Z? But you have the information, tell the people of Ghana that this is our case, our extradition case that has been responded to because we wrote this at X, Y, Z. And here's the evidence of the correspondence.
No, but not factually, there is only one extradition process against her. There was not a new one.
Yes. So, if the Attorney General said, look, I have continued with this extradition case and would ensure that that happens. If you have contrary view to that, come out and say that this is what it is.
He's suggesting to you, if that there was such, interaction.
When did the extradition start?
Then the ambassador would have known.
No, my point is that when did why would the ambassador know?
Somebody had to whisper to him.
Yes, so
then he had to go
and he's
check him
coming
out,
to give that
verify.
stopgap. Imagine, this is a watertight case that the AG is running at his department, that even some key government officials are not aware of because it's an independent case and watertight because of the interest around it. So they don't give out information easily. So if the ambassador gets this information and decides that, look, in my capacity as ambassador, this is the information I have. I'm not representing the state. I'm not representing the AG's office. I'm only serving as a stopgap in terms of communication between, the Ghanaian public and what's being put out there. So we cannot hint that because the ambassador did not get, he should have been the primary recipient of the information. That premise
you spoke about
wouldn't
the
help.
Bureau and said they had done and
I'm pinning it on the Bureau. Pin it on them.
Thank you. Susan, listening to the lawyers talk about the law and all of that and listening to Prof. Khalid also, what do you say now?
When you said that you were reading this, I was like, but I thought the MPP, in your introduction, you said the MPP said that what is the government doing about, what do you call it?
They've actually consistently blamed them for inaction.
And that they shouldn't talk about without Sedina.
Right.
And now you come back to tell us that, well, the process that you started, nothing was done. It was just a matter of course, and it was due. So you had started the pregnancy, and now it was just going on its way, and it's now given birth to. So I was like, okay, so which is which? And it is some of these, for want of a better word, mendacity or duplicity of politicians that people get wary of. You understand? And we are like, how do they actually believe us or think that we will believe them when they say anything? Because you say something one time and then you say another thing which is in contradiction to each other. If it was a matter of course, then fine. It had reached there and it was due and it happened.
I think it is sincerity that and credibility that we need from the politicians, because extraditions normally take a long time.
Exactly.
So whilst the extradition of Tamaklo was ongoing, what the NPP's leaders should have told their base would be that don't point fingers at the Mahama administration because it will take a while.
Apart from it taking a while,
rather some of them were leading it and saying, "You're done nothing."
Exactly.
A while, it's not static. Things evolve.
And then I was also wondering, just administratively, who sends a letter and just sits back and waits for something to happen? Really, I mean, I work in an institution. If you send a letter or an email to somebody and sometimes don't do the active follow-up, it can take 10 years. But if you do an active follow-up, it may be a long process, but it will probably take 2 years.
But it's a fair demand that if there's any suggestion that it is this Attorney General or this administration that has pushed the July extradition of Sedina for us to get this result, then they should show evidence of it. That's a fair demand, right?
Oh, yes, definitely. It's a fair demand. I mean, and the government should respond to it, that if they have, I mean, after all, it should be documented. It's not going to be a verbal thing. It's something that should be documented, and they should be able to show some documentation to say that, look, we just didn't leave it like that. We have the documentation to prove that we have done follow-ups, and so a process that probably would have taken, 6 months.
But is it possible that if the Attorney General says he has been in constant interaction with his counterparts in the US, is it possible that whilst they talk about Kenoforiata, he will say, we have an extradition before you, please look at it for us for Sedina?
It's very
possible. So there will not be evidence to show.
No, it's very possible, but I belong to a research facility. If it's not written, it's not done. So if he said it and it wasn't written and there was no documentation to follow up, then it wasn't done.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Unless his counterparts in the US can corroborate.
Well, I mean,
that if he says so. Right.
It wasn't documented. You can have a conversation with somebody. To cement that conversation, you say, I will write you an email. I'll shoot you a line or two so that you say, as previously discussed, can we...
Very
so that
good professional practice, yeah.
There's always documentary proof of something. Right. Every time, there should be documentary proof of something. Not just for... so that people can have an argument on it, but for history. You understand? To say that we had this conversation and we documented the conversation to say this and this had happened. And I think that is the way we should go with things. So from my mind, I think that maybe now the MPP, they should come up with a stand. They started the process, happy stance. It has happened in this thing. But it is also very symptomatic of our politics. People wanting to take credit for things. And I think that it brings our politics to, I did this, you did this, I did this. We are supposed to be there for the good of the people of Ghana. It doesn't matter whose action it is. If the action is done for the betterment and the growth of the people of Ghana, we shouldn't care who takes credit for it. There's too much of that in our politics. And that is what leads to, I'm building a hospital, I come next and I want to build my own hospital and I don't want to continue.
Right.
It is,
and it's our money that is getting wasted.
Exactly.
All the time.
So they say that the best work is done when people don't care who gets the credit for it, as long as the good that was behind that action is done.
Safe.
And I think that we should move away from that kind of... Yes, praise should be given when praise is due, to encourage people, but that should not be the basis in which our politicians should operate. I think that we want to move away from that.
Thank you very much.
Thing.
A very important issue, and I'm coming to Vicky Bright now. And in the course of this week, one of those issues have come out public about the Ghana Publishing Company, for example, where the current leadership, after about barely 1 year, is seeking to take praise for everything, credit for everything that has happened there. And then the leader of that place, David Asante Boateng, has also come out to say, you are wrong. And some of us have had to go to his defense on that regard, because I am a user of the assembly press, for example, because I need laws, I do things, there are notaries, other stuff there, like change of names and other things. And for a long time, the place was abandoned. The place was deserted. You didn't like to go there, even the bookshop. You go there and you are in a hurry to leave. But when David Asante Boateng took over, he transformed that place, sincerely. 2019, I did something stake to focus on David Asante Boateng, to praise him for justifying the appointment of youth, because he had transformed the place dramatically, miraculously. And only today somebody comes and says he did nothing. This is a thing that we should stop. What you have heard, across the table and on Zoom, what do you have to say about these extradition matters?
Look, extradition is a complex process, and it's a long process. Typically, it will take between 1 and 3 years, and that's when it's going smoothly. So it's no surprise that it's taking that long. But at the same time, as everyone's been saying, it doesn't kind of go along by itself. Someone has to push it along. And the country that made the request has to remain interested in the request and follow it up, etc., etc. So MPP, yes, they started the process. NDC clearly took over at some point and pushed it through, because I don't think the timing of Ken's extradition and Sedna's extradition, Ken's detention, I should say, and Sedna's...
The arrest was actually the same day for both of them.
Exactly. So it was coordinated. So I don't think that was just a coincidence, So we have to give credit to this administration as well for following it through, because after all, MPP had been going on and on about you're not doing anything, you've just left it because it's one of your own, etc., etc. And so they've done it, actually. They arrested both the MPP person and the NDC person.
Is it possible that the Ghanaian authorities, seeing that extradition takes a long time, like you said, 2 to 3 years, decided to snitch on its own citizens who were there and were wanted, and so ICE rather went for one, the marshals went for the other, instead of following the extradition process?
It's funny you say that, because, in the UK, I know that the nationality, the people who snitch on each other the most are the Ghanaians. The Nigerians don't do that to each other. But the Ghanaian will call the Home Office and say, Kofi, is in wherever, East London, wherever. Go and this is his address, blah, blah, blah. Then he'll quietly sit there. He doesn't have papers, So it's possible. We do that to each other. And this whole thing about, people wanting to take credit, sometimes to the detriment of the actual national discourse or development, it's a serious problem that we have in this country. I don't think that what David Asante Boateng has done should be discounted, because you're right. He did. I didn't like going to the assembly press. In fact, I would almost never go there. I will send a clerk to go, And what he's done, or what he did back then, is something to be commended. Right. And what the new person has done in the first year is also something to be commended. But don't do it without giving credit to what started before. It just doesn't help us in any way at all as a nation.
Right.
So I think we need to give credit where credit is due.
Because I think maybe my stance on praising the Attorney General's office is probably what is bringing all this, right? So to give clarity to it is that I wouldn't have done so if they were not attacked from the outset, because they were attacked for doing nothing. So if something
I
happens...
hadn't quite landed.
Oh, sorry. She's a presidential lawyer, so she takes her time. So that was a very long pause. I apologize.
So no, I mean, I had almost finished.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that... So this extradition matter, I think that this government clearly took a step in accelerating Sedina's extradition in her case.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we want to take a break from here, but Tuayabwa, Alfred, any concluding comments you want to make, because your commentary has stayed on Sedina. I haven't heard you say anything about Ken Ofori-Atta. There's a request by people like Hobson Adoye that the MPP as a group should have been urging Ofori-Atta to voluntarily do a patriotic duty, a civic duty, by handing himself in. Yes, Alfred. Yes, go ahead. You can be heard now.
No, I've not heard any question. What is the issue?
My question was that there's been a call by some of your party people even that you would have done Ofori-Atta a lot of good if you had urged on him to act patriotic or be civic-minded and to hand himself in, rather than now face the embarrassment internationally that he's going through. You didn't hear that? Okay. Bobby, what do you have to say about that in a minute?
I think that I caught on to government being a continuous process. Whatever has started by previous government, once it is in a good light, deserves continuation. And like a lawyer that also used to purchase statutes and things from the Ghana publishing, I think we all saw the good work that was done by Mr. Asante. I think that's his name. Never met him, but my office is just...
He brought the Ghana Publishing Company to its current glory, period.
Yes. And I would, yes, I agree. And I would want to add that even at the point, they were even marketing their services for publication for private authors.
Right.
Which hitherto was not done. During his term, they were marketing that if you're a private author. So the idea was that they were only publishing government laws. And then during his time, they even went ahead to market. And I because I had authored some books, I had a quote from them in that. They
even started the premium services, the express services. And in 2019, when I was speaking and I was talking about even visiting the washrooms there, you have no idea what it used to be. And now you go into that washroom and you are happy. You get to the front desk and they are attending to you. That's what he started. And all the big machines, modern machines that were brought in there. And government, had made issued a fiat asking that people should take government jobs to them, and they began to execute. I spoke to the Electoral Commission at the time, and they said they had given them work for assembly elections. And the guys finished their job almost 2 weeks ahead of the private companies. Can you imagine a state institution that was doing that?
I think something, if this may be of any help, I know of a few CEOs too that were appointed by the former administration that have still kept their post because of the good work that they have done, even more than a year after a change of government. I think that Mr. Nana Ben, I think he's GIF also, Ghana Infrastructural something, he's still at post. And I think that the Ghana Airport is also at post. So there are a few of those examples that you can put in. But generally, at the end of the day... I would have wished that
the Cybersecurity Boss also kept his post. He took us from 27 or 32% of international ratings to 99+% and brought us at par with Singapore, with US in cybersecurity.
Wow.
So not everything was bad in the regime,
yes,
like when people talk about it.
Security issues, even regardless of if it's the same government that stayed, when leadership change, they can still. So that's always a sensitive and touchy area.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Alfred, I'll ask you a question. Did you hear it? Did you hear it?
Oh, Samson.
Alfred. Hello, Alfred.
Yeah, Samson, yes.
Did you hear my question?
No, please you can repeat it.
I'm saying that there are calls on you, that including from some of your members, Hobson Adoye and the rest, maybe former member, who are saying that you would have done Kenuforiata, well. You would have done him good if all of you had, urged him to be patriotic and do a civic duty by handing himself in, rather than wait until what has now befallen him, suffering such an international embarrassment.
I mean, Mr. Foriata is an individual within the NPP. And he indicated to Ghanaians why he wanted to travel to the U.S. While in the U.S., things were commenced in Ghana, and he decided to also engage his lawyers. I do not have much information at this end. I have not been his lawyer I wouldn't be in a position to advise him. So I'd like to rest here for now, but I believe in due process.
You were not Godfrey Dami's lawyer when he had to go to the police CID and 100 or so of you lawyers from the MPP went there. You were not Wuntumi's lawyer or the other people, their lawyers, when they were held by Iyoko and the NPP massed up there, spending nights over the vigil. So what do you mean by it's an individual and you can't advise them when you can protest over others?
There are two things. Legal issues and political issues. When it comes to legal issues, now that I'm not in public office, I've been a private legal practitioner. I offer opinion when I'm duly engaged and properly remunerated. And so in terms of my legal opinion, I'm able to offer it now because he has his own lawyers. Instead of the political process, the party went to the CID or other places to defend or solidarize with those who are arrested. That's not the case in Ken's matter now. Ken has not been arrested in Ghana. He's not been placed in custody. Nobody has masked up somebody to say, don't go and extradite him. What I believe is about due process. If at the end of everything in the U.S., it is ordered that Ken should be brought to Ghana, why not?
Okay.
That is due process.
I just had to ask a question, but I know you are a nice guy, Alfred. Thank you very much for your time.
I just want to
My pleasure.
say this, when we're speaking that maybe Ghanaian politicians don't believe that, is it the quote or the saying that I have seen far because I have stood on the shoulders of giants. We never want to say that we have seen far because we've stood on people who have been great. But great people say these things, that it is not because of them alone, but it's because they have been able to rely on the vision and the wisdom of other people, and that is why they have gone far. Too many times, of course, but our politicians these days are, hey, that is why they refuse to admit that, because I think part of being great is being able to admit that you were not the only person in that success, and that people had aided you and had been the people who had helped you to get success. I think we must get to that point where we are able to acknowledge that we didn't just pull ourselves by our own bootstraps and that help was given somewhere. I think, maybe then we'll stop this kind of...
Was I seeing you putting your hand up?
No, I just wanted to say we're getting there with the reset agenda that we've had. Okay. And as you can see in the outlook of the president and vice president, and how things are being done.
Your party people don't like people who act nice, like you're trying to do.
I know that I have a groundswell of support for my party's base, especially the grassroots, in how we do this.
I was surprised to discover that you were in the lecture room in Sheffield for 11 good years
11
teaching.
good years. Most people don't know that. Right. So, it's quite interesting, Samson. So you have some people even doubting my credentials because of that.
Forget about them. Even Nana Akufo-Addo's legal credentials were doubted in this republic.
They have no idea and they will ask.
So when we return, how do you define gender identity? This is how it was defined in the teacher's manual for the physical education teaching. It says gender identity refers to a person's deeply felt internal experience of gender. It's not about male, female. It is what you deeply feel in your internal experience of what gender is, which may or may not correspond with the sex assigned at birth. So forget it, whether you are a boy or a girl, that's not exactly who you are. What you are is what you feel. This is the definition here. It can include being male, female, or a blend of both. Really? This concept goes beyond the binary notion of gender, male and female, and recognizes the diversity of gender experiences and expression. This definition is what has brought a problem. And the NACA says this has been withdrawn, removed, and replaced with what our Ghanaian culture accepts. The Catholic Bishops' Conference have issued their statement. You know, you can trust them to do that. And the minority MPP in Parliament have a lot of demands that the head of the NACA should go, and some other people should also suffer. But now it's turning out that they had nothing to do with it. We'll be right back to check on that.